Hello everyone, I welcome you all to this YouTube channel Chemistry Stars. Today we are going to practice some of the PYQs of NEET 2021. So let us move on to the first question, that is, which one of the following methods can be used to obtain highly pure metal which is liquid at room temperature? See, in this question, they have given you a hint, right? They have mentioned that a metal which is liquid at room temperature. In the periodic table, there is a very famous metal which can exist in liquid state at room temperature. What is the name of that metal? It is nothing but mercury, right? Mercury is the metal which can exist in liquid form at room temperature. So, and in the NCERT textbook, they have clearly mentioned that zinc, cadmium, and mercury are the three metals which can be purified using the process called distillation. So, distillation is the answer. Okay, this is how you have to approach this question. And zone refining, if I talk about the other options, zone refining cannot be used to purify this kind of metal. Zone refining is used to purify metals which are semiconductors, right? That is, silicon, germanium, gallium. Most of these metals are semiconductors. Silicon, germanium, gallium, these metals can be purified using zone refining. Now, electrolysis is a purification process for purifying the metal copper. Okay, you have studied about, in the NCERT it is given, see, you have studied about electrolytic refining of copper, right? Like, and the impure metal, that is impure copper is used as anode and pure metal is used as cathode. And you have also studied about anode, mud, blister, copper and all. So electrolysis is a method which is used to purify the metal copper. And chromatography is something related to more than purification. It is related to separation process. Okay, separation of lanthanoids and actinoids. So chromatography will not come. Distillation is the answer. Fine. Okay. If you are familiar with these three examples, which are given in your NCERT textbook, then it is very easy for you to answer this question. Now, let me show you the solution. See, distillation method is generally used for the purification of metals having low boiling point. See, this question is particularly related to the metal mercury. Okay, but zinc, mercury, and cadmium, these are the metals which have low boiling point. Okay, when you give a temperature above boiling point, it will boil easily, and it turns to vapor phase. Okay, impurities will remain in that state itself, and these pure metals only that pure metal turns in convert into vapor phase when you give the temperature above the boiling point, and that vapor can be condensed and the pure metal can be collected. Okay, this is how the distillation process works. And if you're studying any of the metallurgical processes, remember to study the principle behind that. Okay, it is very important to understand the principle behind each and every metallurgical processes. Okay, then it will be perfect. Now, the next question is, consider the above reaction and identify the missing reagent or chemical. The reaction is CH3, CH2, COO minus Na plus. What is this? This is sodium salt of carboxylic acid, right? On the treatment with NaOH plus what gives you an alkane. Here the product is an alkane. It is ethane, right? So what is this reagent? This is very easy question. Direct question from NCERT. Organic portion, right? And the answer is CaO. See, NaOH plus CaO. That mixture is known as soda lime. Very famous reagent, right? Soda lime. Remember that. Okay, that is when mixture of NaOH and calcium oxide is known as soda lime. So that is the reagent. Very simple question. Now, okay, NaOH plus CaO. That this is known as soda lime. Fine. Okay. Now the next question is molar conductance of NaCl, HCl, and CH3COO at infinite dilution are, these are the values, and the molar conductance of CH3COOH at infinite dilution. Molar conductance, that is, they have asked you molar, how you represent molar conductance at infinite dilution. This capital lambda m naught. Okay, this is molar conductance at infinite dilution of CH3 acetic acid is asked. So, see, this question is completely based on the concept of Kohlrausch's law of independent migration of ions. If you know that, know the concept behind that Kohlrausch's law, it is very easy to answer this question, right? Otherwise, you cannot answer this. So that is a very easy concept. And this question is from the chapter electrochemistry. Yeah. According to the law of Kohlrausch's law of independent migration of ions, they have asked you to calculate lambda naught m of CH3COOH is equal to. See, there is a trick to solve this thing. Okay, this is not an equation. See, if they have asked you to calculate the molar conductance of molar conductance of acetic acid, this is equal to lambda naught m. So I will tell you something to remember like this. This is the anionic part, right? CH3COO minus is the anionic part. Write a salt of that anionic part. Okay, it is. So let me here we can take the sodium salt of acetic acid, that is CH3COO Na. Now here H plus is the cationic part. So lambda naught m. Take the salt of that H plus ion. We can take here HCl. So lambda naught m HCl. Add these two. Okay, this is addition. Minus, just remove NaCl. Okay, minus this NaCl. Okay, here Na, here Cl. So minus lambda naught m NaCl. Fine. You have to subtract this salt. And lambda naught m CH3COO Na. The value is given as 91.0 Siemens centimeter square mole inverse. So substitute all the values. Lambda naught m HCl is given and lambda naught m NaCl is given. So substitute all these values, and this is simple calculation. Okay, this is a very simple numerical which you can numerical type question. So the answer, when you subtract this, the answer is 390.71 Siemens centimeter square mole inverse. Okay, this is the answer. Fine. Okay, very easy question. Now, right option for the number of tetrahedral and octahedral bonds in hexagonal primitive unit cell are. It is hexagonal primitive unit cell, right? What is the okay? How many particles contribute to this hexagonal primitive unit cell? Contribution of particles. Contribution of particles n is equal to 6, right? When you hear it as hexagonal primitive unit cell, contribution of number of particles is 6. Okay, if you hear hexagonal, n is equal to 6. You first of all you have to find n. Then only you can find number of tetrahedral bonds and octahedral bonds. I'm writing tetrahedral bonds as Tv. Tv is equal to 2n. This is a very fundamental thing which you have to know from the chapter solid state. Okay, Tv is equal to 2n, number of tetrahedral voids, and number of octahedral voids OV is equal to n, right? Number of particles itself. Just remember T tetrahedral voids, T means 2, TT. Okay, just remember like that. Number of tetrahedral voids is 2n and number of octahedral voids is n. Here n is 6. So here you get 2 into 6, that is 12, and number of octahedral voids as 6. So 12,6 is the answer. Fine. Very simple question. Again. Okay. Now let me move on to the next question. Which of the following reactions is the metal displacement reaction? Choose the right option. High school student can answer this question. It is that much simple. Okay, even if you don't know what is a metal displacement reaction, then also you can answer this question by checking the options, because these options are very easy. See, the first reaction is decomposition reaction. Okay, this reactant is getting decomposed into such products. It is decomposition reaction, and this is also decomposition reaction. Here, this is delta. Okay, that is temperature, not delta, temperature. This is also decomposition reaction. Fine. Now, this is metal displacement reaction. So this is the right option. And the fourth option, that is Fe, this is also a displacement reaction, but this is non-metal displacement reaction. How? Because here hydrogen is getting displaced and this is a gas, right? This is a non-metal. So this is non-metal displacement reaction. Only the metal, they have asked you metal displacement reaction, and that is this option. And what is the meaning of metal displacement reaction? A reactive metal displaces a comparatively less reactive metal from its compound. That is known as metal displacement reaction. And here aluminium is the reactive metal and chromium is comparatively less reactive. So here this atom of aluminium is displacing chromium from this compound Cr2O3. Okay, so chromium is getting displaced by aluminium. Fine. So this is the metal displacement reaction. Hope it is clear to you. Now, okay. Now next question is match the following. Match the following. The compound is given and shapes are given. PCl5 is the very famous compound, right? You are studying the structure of PCl5, that is not structure, shape, that is trigonal bipyramidal, right? It is trigonal bipyramidal. You have studied it like, PCl5 has trigonal bipyramidal shape having 3 equatorial bonds and 2 axial bonds, right? This is a very famous compound which you have studied. So really you can match A with 4, right? Fourth one. So what happens is that third option gets cancelled and this option also gets cancelled. So here are the 2 options. Now SF6. SF6 means it has octahedral shape. B3. Yeah, B3. Now BF3. I know. I hope you know the shape of BF3, right? BF3 is trigonal planar in shape. So D is 2. So this option is the right option. Okay. Here, this is the right option. I'll show you the. I'll tell you the explanation. Okay. Here, this is the structure of PCl3, right? This you have already studied. That is, these are the 3 equatorial bonds and these are the 2 axial bonds. Fine. And this is sp3d hybridized. Also, you have studied the hybridization of PCl5. Now, if I talk about SF6, it has a octahedral shape. See how you are. Listen. How I'm getting this is sp3d hybridization. If I hear a compound SF6, how I can write it has sp3d2 hybridization and it is octahedral in shape and all. See, sulfur means not atomic number. It belongs to the 16th group, right? Oxygen, sulfur. Yeah, it belongs to the 16th group. So the valence electron of valence electrons of sulfur is 6, right? 6. So, and it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And these 6 valence electrons are combining with 6 fluorine atoms. SF6 means, yeah, it is forming a bond with 6 fluorine atoms. So here, when you observe this structure, you can see 6 bond pairs, right? You can see 6 bond pairs. Plus, how many lone pairs? 0 lone pairs. Fine. 6 bond pairs and 0 lone pairs. So the hybridization is for this condition, 6 bond pairs plus 0 lone pairs. The hybridization is sp3d2, something related to 3 plus 2, 5 plus 1, 6, right? sp3d2 hybridized. And if it is sp3d2, then it has octahedral shape. This is how you find hybridization. You have studied all these things in detail in the chapter chemical bonding, I think. Now, if I talk about BrF5, the central metal atom Br, bromine belongs to the 17th group, right? Halogen family, 17th group. So the valence electrons of bromine is 7. Fine. And here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7. 6 and 7. Okay, BrF5 means there are only 5 fluorine atoms, right? 5 fluorine atoms. So a lone pair will be present because 7 valence electrons. So a lone pair will be present, and other 5 electrons are bonded with 5 fluorine atoms. Here, if you observe this structure, you can say that here we have 5 bond pairs, 5 bond pairs, and 1 lone pair, right? So total it makes 6. So sp3d2 is the hybridization, and in such a situation, the shape is square pyramidal in shape. Okay, this is square pyramidal in shape, and we have already discussed the structure of BF3 sp2 hybridization, and also I'm not explaining it now. Okay, and PCl5 we are also checking the hybridization and the shape by that method. Okay, phosphorus means it belongs to the 15th group. So 5 electrons, so 5 bond pairs, like that you're getting sp3d hybridization. Hope it is clear to you. Now next question is, which one of the following polymers is prepared by addition polymerization? In NCERT, there are you are studying about condensation polymerization and also addition polymerization. The answer is Teflon, right? Answer is Teflon. Okay. Dacron, nylon, 6 and Novolac are condensation polymers. Okay. Dacron. I think dacron is a polymer of, what are the monomers of dacron? Ethylene glycol and terephthalic acid are the monomers of dacron. 2 different compounds having different functional group, right? Ethylene glycol and terephthalic acid. So it undergoes condensation polymerization. Another name of dacron is steriline, and it is a polyester, right? Yeah, and it is used in, dacron is used in make as you know, it is fiber, synthetic fiber in textile industry and all. Nylon 66 is a polymer of hexamethylene diamine and adipic acid, nylon 66, and it is also a fiber, means it is used in textile industries and all. Novolac is, okay, Novolac is a polymer of, it is a linear polymer of phenol and formaldehyde, linear structure, phenol and formaldehyde. And Novolac is also something related to bakelite, right? Bakelite is formed from Novolac. Okay, and Novolac, you can use Novolac in paints, right? Paint. Okay, these all are because here see dacron irons, all the there are two different monomers, right? Two different monomers, different functional, the monomers have different functional groups. So these all belong to the condensation polymerization. What is the condensation polymerization? I have already uploaded a video related to polymers chapter, so you can watch that for clearly understanding what are condensation polymers, what are addition polymers and all. Okay. Now, Teflon is an addition polymer. Monomer of Teflon is tetrafluoroethene. So, yeah, tetrafluoroethene is the monomer. Ethene means CH2 double bond CH2. Tetrafluoroethene means instead of H2 we have F2. Okay, this is I hope this is clear. N number of CF2. This is tetrafluoroethene. CF2 double bond CF2. What is tetrafluoro? 4-fluorine, right? So tetrafluoroethene. In presence of a catalyst and high pressure, you will get this is addition. Addition polymerization is undergone by molecules having double or triple bond. Here you can see double bond, and also unlike condensation polymers, here only one type of monomer is present, right? In other condensation polymers, you can see two different types of monomers, but here only one type of monomers is found. So the, such molecules undergo addition polymerization. Okay, so CF2 double bond. Okay, when you are writing the monomer CF2, remove this double bond and put single bond. Okay, CF2 and put a bracket. Put a bracket. Put a bond here, put another bond here, and the end will come here. This is the polymer, and this polymer is also known as polytetrafluoroethene, and in short, we will call it as Teflon. What are the uses of Teflon? Teflon is used in very famous example, that is in our non-stick cookwares, okay, in kitchen utensils, non-stick pans and all are made up of Teflon, and okay, in that we use Teflon material, and in waterproof fabric you use Teflon, and in the medical applications also, like some surgical devices and all, Teflons are used. Teflon is used. Okay, these polymers are made use of in such cases. So just remember some of the uses also. Now, zirconium and hafnium have similar atomic and ionic radii because of. The answer is okay. Zirconium and hafnium have similar atomic and ionic radii. Here, the only answer is lanthanoid contraction. Okay, lanthanoid contractions. See, zirconium and hafnium belongs to the same group. Okay, it is correct. But you know, these zirconium and hafnium are not F block elements. Okay, they are D block elements. Zirconium and hafnium are D block elements. And see, in the periodic table, you have to be familiar with the D block elements also. Okay. Zirconium comes under the 4D series, and hafnium comes under the 5D series of D block elements. And actually, this is just hafnium is down to zirconium in the periodic table. So what happened down the group, the atomic size should atomic and ionic size should increase, right? It is the general trend. But here this anomalous behavior, that is here zirconium and hafnium, that is 4D, the elements in 4D and 5D series have similar atomic and ionic radius because of the influence of lanthanoid contraction, or you can say it is due to the consequence of lanthanoid contraction. Okay, fine. Before this hafnium, there are F block elements, right? And F block elements. So the lanthanoid contraction, okay, that is epilogue elements means lanthanoids, and due to that there is an influence of this lanthanoid contraction to this elements. So that is why 4D series and 5D series the elements in 4D series and 5D series are having similar atomic and ionic radii. It is a consequence of lanthanoid contraction. Hope it is clear. Okay, I hope you all know about lanthanoid contraction, right? Okay, the almost identical radii of zirconium and hafnium is a consequence of lanthanoid contraction. Now, okay, next question is ethylene diamine tetraacetate EDTA ion is. This is very easy question. It is EDTA is not tridentate. Okay, it is not unidentate. It is not trident. It is completely wrong. Unidentate, completely wrong. Bidentate is so strong. It is hexadentate. EDTA is hexadentate ligand with 4 oxygen and 2 nitrogen donor atoms. How it is saying it has 4 oxygen and 2 nitrogen donor atoms. Say the meaning of denticity means number of donor atoms that it has. Okay, it is something related to that, and let me show you. This is don't feel complicated by seeing this structure. The structure of EDTA is very easy to learn. EDTA means ethylene, right? Ethylene. Ethylene means CH2. How you represent ethylene? CH2, CH2. This is ethylene. Diamine. Amine. What is amine? NH2. Diamine means 2 amine group, right? So NH2 and NH2. Ethylene diamine. Tetraacetate means 4. Tetra 4, right? 4 acetate groups. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Acetate. Acetate means CH3, COO minus, right? This is acetate anion. Here also CH3, COO minus, second acetate anion. Then third acetate anion, CH3, COO minus. Here also minus. Here there are 2. This can act as a donor atom. Okay, this nitrogen. See, this nitrogen can act as a donor atom. This nitrogen can act as a donor atom. So 2 nitrogen donor atoms and 4 oxygen donor atom. This oxygen alone is a donor atom. Okay, O minus. This oxygen alone, not this oxygen. The oxygen which is at this area. Okay, here this is a donor atom. This 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so 4 oxygen donor atoms. This is how the structure of EDTA looks like. Okay, this is the structure. Is it simple? Okay. Now, okay, that is the structure which are shown here. That is, this is a metal. If this is the metal, it can form coordinate bond through 4 oxygen atoms and 2 nitrogen atoms. That is why here it is saying that 4 oxygen, 2 nitrogen donor atoms. Hope this is clear to you. Fine. Now, the pKb of dimethylamine and pKa of acetic acid, okay, it is given respectively at peak temperature. The correct option for the pH of, this is the equilibrium from the chapter equilibrium, direct formula based question. Okay, direct formula based question. And acetic acid is weak acid, and dimethyl amine, this is also, amine is a weak base, right? So diacetate is a I'm sorry. Okay, this is a pK. What is the meaning of pKb? It is the base dissociation constant. pK means acid dissociation constant, right? and they have asked you to calculate the pH of dimethyl ammonium acetate. So this dimethyl ammonium acetate is a salt, right? And it is a salt which is formed from the weak acid and weak base, right? Because as it is a salt formed from this base and this acid. So it is a salt formed from weak acid and weak base. For the equation to find the pH of such a salt is pH is equal to 7 plus half into pKa minus pKb. Or also, this is a direct formula based question. You have to study this formula. Or also, there is a formula known as pH is equal to, okay, this is just this equation. Okay, this equation is similar to pH is equal to half into, I'll write here, pH is equal to half into pKw. pKw means dissociation constant of water. pKw plus pKa minus pKb. Sorry, minus pKb. Okay. Hope. Okay, this is a. Hope this is clear. Minus p k. Learn this equation. Okay. pKw is the dissociation constant of water, and it is 14, right? pK half into 14. Okay. This equation is similar to this equation. Okay, here 14 by 2, that is 7. It is written like that. pKw is always constant. It is 14 plus pKa is given to you as 4.77, right? Yeah, pKa is 4.77, and substitute this value carefully, and you will get the answer. You will get the answer as 7.77, 7.75. That is the answer. Okay, 7.75. Structures of beryllium chloride in solid state and vapor phase are. That is the next question. In solid state and in the vapor phase, beryllium chloride, the structure of beryllium chloride varies. Okay. The beryllium chloride means it is BeCl2. BeCl2. Beryllium bonded with 2 chlorine atoms. This molecule is not so stable because the octet is not completed. Okay. The octet is not completed. Here only has 1, 2, 3, 4 electrons around it, right? 4 electrons, very electron deficient compound, a very electron deficient molecule. So it cannot exist in this way. Okay, so in the solid state, it forms. In the solid state, remember, in the solid state, it exists as a polymer chain. Okay, polymer chain, and what is the valence electrons of beryllium is only 2, right? But here it is forming 4 bonds. How? Valence electrons are only 2, beryllium. Beryllium, hydrogen, helium, lithium, beryllium. Atomic number is 4. The valence electron, it has only 2 electrons, but here it is forming 4 bonds. How? See, these all are coordinate bonds. Okay, because what is the meaning of coordinate bond? Here, the 2 electrons. Okay. This is not an electron from beryllium. Okay, this is not an electron from beryllium. This is an electron from chlorine, and this is also an electron. It is the electron pair in this bond is only is given by chlorine to beryllium. Beryllium has only, this is the electron of beryllium, and this is the second electron of beryllium. These 2 bonds are coordinate bonds. Okay, coordinate bonds shared by chlorine atom to beryllium. So it forms coordinate bonded linear polymer chain. This we can call it. Okay, this is coordinate bond. This is coordinate bond. These all are coordinate bond. Okay. This is coordinated bonded linear polymer chain. We will call it as okay, this is forming a chain like this, right? M times. So it is a polymer chain, coordinate bonded polymer chain. So in the solid state, it is chain in the chain form, and in the vapor state, it exists as dimer. In the vapor state, it exists as dimer. Dimer means Be2, not BeCl2. This is BeCl2 is beryllium chloride. Dimeric form means Be2Cl4, and that this is the structure. In this, beryllium has not completed its octet. Okay, it is not that much stable because polymeric form is stable. Why? I can say polymeric form is stable because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There are 8 electrons around beryllium, right? It is somewhat stable. It's not that much electron deficient. But here, these two beryllium, these are electron deficient because there are only 6 electrons around beryllium, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It is not. It has not completed. It is again electron deficient. So here in the remember in the vapor phase, it forms a chloro-bridged dimer. This is bridge, right? This is bridge. So it forms a chloro-bridged dimer. Hope the structures are clear. And this is direct question from NCERT. Okay. So the answer is chain and dimer respectively. Okay, that is answer. Now, for a reaction of A gives B, enthalpy of reaction is minus 4.2 kilojoule mole inverse. And the enthalpy of activation is given to you as 9. The correct potential energy, here some curves are given, that is some graphs are given. They have asked you the correct graph regarding the details given in this question. A is the reactant, and in the formation of this product B, the enthalpy of reaction is negative, right? What is the meaning of this? Is not a numerical question. Okay, don't complicate this question by thinking huge stuffs. This is very easy question. Enthalpy of reaction is minus 4.2 kilojoule per mole means enthalpy, if enthalpy is negative, clearly from this thing, okay, this negative sign you have to look. Okay, clearly you can say exothermic reaction is taking place. The reaction is exothermic. Okay, when the reactant A forms the product B, exothermic reaction is taking place. So if exothermic reaction is taking place, the graph of exothermic reaction is like this, right? If the during that exothermic reaction is, during that reaction energy is released. Okay, energy is released. So if energy is released, the in the product the energy will be low, right? In the product side, that is product means it is B. So here the energy, this is potential energy, right? Y-axis is potential energy, so it will be at low, and the reaction, sorry, and then the reactant the energy is high. The only graph matching the condition of exothermic reaction is this one. Here the product is in higher energy, so this is wrong. Here also it is wrong, and here also it is wrong. This is same level. No, exothermic reaction means energy is released, so the products will have low energy than reactants. So this is the graph that matches the condition. Fine. Very tricky question. Now, for irreversible expansion of an ideal gas under isothermal condition, the correct option is here the thermodynamics. This is the question from thermodynamics. Irreversible expansion means, okay, before that, the options are related to delta S and delta U, right? Delta S and delta U. From in such questions, from some words you can identify the answer. Irreversible expansion is mentioned of an ideal gas, right? Irreversible expansion of an ideal gas means it is an irreversible reaction. Okay. Irreversible reaction means delta S will be always greater than 0. Change in entropy is, that is, uh, irreversible expansion means delta S will not be equal to 0. Okay, so you can cancel this option and you can cancel this option. Okay, will not be equal to 0. So this, by irreversible expansion means delta S. What is delta S? S2 minus S1. Final entropy will be larger. See, irreversible processes, it is very, irreversible processes are very famous. All the natural processes are irreversible process. For example, waterfall. If you consider the natural phenomenon, that natural waterfall, can you reverse it? Can you reverse it naturally? No. So all the things which are taking place in the universe are irreversible process. That is, we can say that is spontaneous process, right? So in such spontaneous process, S2, that is final entropy, will be larger. You have studied this, right? This concept is very simple. Final and S2, final entropy is larger, and the uh, initial entropy is smaller. So this value, if it is larger and this is smaller, S2 minus S1 will always be greater than 0. Okay, that is delta S will always be greater than 0. So it is equal to 0 means it is wrong. So the option will be this or this. And let us check about, now it is, you have to find about delta U. So delta U means it is mentioned that isothermal condition, right? Isothermal condition. In see, delta U is somewhat related to delta U is a function of temperature. Okay, delta U is a function of temperature. If isothermal means, okay, here they have mentioned here this word is very important. Okay, isothermal condition is very important. Isothermal condition means delta T is equal to 0, right? Change in temperature. Isothermal means change in temperature is 0. That thing you have to know. And what is the equation relating? Okay, delta T is 0, and internal energy U is a function of delta T. If delta T is 0, then delta U is equal to 0. Simple. This is the answer. Now there is an equation relating these two. If you know the equation, you can answer by confirming that also. That is delta U is equal to NCV delta T. This is the equation which is studying in the chapter thermodynamics. Okay. If delta T, isothermal means delta T 0, right? Isothermal means delta C 0. So NCV into 0 means 0. So delta U is equal to 0. Simple. That's it. Okay, okay, the questions are over, and hope this is helpful to you. Please do subscribe this channel and share with your friends if you feel this helpful. Okay, so we will be back with the part 3 of this video, of this session. Okay, thank you everyone. Bye bye.